for being a little bit late today. The topic, of course, is Pirkei Avot, chapter 2, Mishnah 8, which in the Mishnah is a very long Mishnah, and then the Sidur is broken up into a few parts. And I'm following the Kahati here. And today I'll be talking about, again, Mishnah 8 and probably Mishnah 9 as well, but I might complete Mishnah 9 next week. Now, last week I talked about Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai, and I said Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai, the beginning of Mishnah 8, he is a student of Hillel and Shammai. He is also, I mentioned that in the last 10 years of his life, he was the one who set up Kerem B'Yavne after the destruction of the Second Temple, and saw to it that Torah life was preserved despite the destruction of the temple and of Jerusalem. And therefore his statement is very timely, where he says, Im lamadata Torah harbe al tachazik tova la'atzmacha ki l'chach notzarta. If you study Torah, a lot of Torah, don't pat yourself on the back, because this is the reason why you were created. I think I mentioned last time too that if we compare this to chapter 1 in Pirkei Avot, where it says that the world is based on 3 legs. If you remember, Al Torah, Al Ha'avodah, Val Gemilut Chasadim, that the world is based on 3 things, which is Torah and the service of the temple, which is understood later on as prayer, and the Gemilut Chasadim, and doing good deeds, which is like mitzvot, if you want to put it that way. So all of a sudden, the whole Torah is based now only on 1 leg. You were created in order to study Torah. This also becomes a discussion also among the first generation scholars of the Amoraim in the land of Israel, where also they discuss what is the most important of the 3 legs, which I don't want to go into right now. But this idea of Torah as everything was because of the understanding that the Torah is the one element or institution of Judaism which has the power to educate the people in their understanding of their traditions and their beliefs, or to keep them going in the diaspora, despite everything. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai understood this early along. And this also changes the focus of Judaism to what today sometimes we call Torah-based Judaism, which is, of course, is a much, much later concept among Lithuanian Jewry, which shapes the yeshiva world too, under the understanding and the visions of Chaim Volozhin in the 19th century, where he sets up the first yeshiva in Volozhin in 1802, which I just recently wrote a book about. But it starts early on with the destruction of the temple, understanding that the need to reshape Judaism as Torah-centered, now that it's not temple-centered anymore, and it's not even the land of Israel-centered anymore in Jerusalem, because there's the Roman occupation. So the Torah is the new center, and this center is going to be the boat, which is going to carry it in the stormy waters of the Galut, in those seas, until finally dry land is discovered again. So this vision of Yochanan ben Zakkai after the destruction of the first temple, that the Torah is going to be that safety boat which is going to carry the Jewish people in the stormy waters of the Galut during the exile, and therefore has to be given the central focal point. This is going to be a vision which eventually is going to be adopted by the rabbis of basically of the Amoraim, of the Gemara. We're going to reinterpret Judaism in this way. I don't want to give a lot of examples of this, but the examples, of course, are abundant in the Talmud, where it talks about King David as being like a Rosh Yeshiva, and of Joshua of being like a Rosh Yeshiva. I mean, these things are things known in Aggadic material in the Talmud. The idea of even reinterpreting the personalities of Jewish history in order to see them as relating to the center point at this point of Judaism, which is the study of Torah. And then it continues and says, there were 5 students to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Now, of course, he had much more than 5 students, but it means these are the ones he's focusing on. These were the 5 important students. And what does he say about them? There's Rabbi Lezer ben Horkanos, who's known as Rabbi Lezer, and Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, who's known as Rabbi Yeshua. In the Talmud, we have discussions and arguments between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. These are the students of Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai. For instance, in the Talmud, there's an argument between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. When was the world created? Was it created in Tishrei, which of course we have Rosh Hashanah and Tishrei, or was it created in Nisan? The same Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Joshua in the Talmud Rosh Hashanah also have an argument when not only when the world was created, but when about the flood, which months the flood was in, based on whether it's beginning from Tishrei or from Nisan. They also have an argument concerning the argument of whether the Geulah, the eventual redemption of the Jewish people, is contingent on the people doing teshuvah or not. Also an argument between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Joshua. Interesting arguments of this first generation of the Jewish diaspora in the land of Israel. Then we have Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel, and Rabbi Lezer ben Arach. These 5 students who are singled out as being prominent students of Yochanan ben Zakkai. Hu haya moneh shivchan, which means Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai used to talk about their strong points. And he said, Rabbi Lezer ben Horkanos bor sud, which means sheino min abed tipa. He's like a pit which has a cement pit, meaning that the water can't come out of it, right? It's already filled in with plaster, with cement, bor sud. Sud today, it means like a plastered um, um, pit, which collects water. Usually these type of pits, borot, were usually made for rainwater to catch, and because it's plastered, or let's say cemented, we would say today, therefore, it retains everything. In other words, he had a perfect memory. When he studied Torah, he had the ability to retaining great amounts of material. He was like what we would call today a walking encyclopedia. And of course, the Talmud already in a few places said, Kulam tzrichim lebalei chitim. Everybody needs those who know how to carry the wheat. Meaning, if you want to make bread, you need somebody who can carry the wheat, which means somebody who knows the sources. And it's always helpful. Of course, this is before you had computers and you had other possibilities, but in general, knowledge and vast knowledge helps a person understand the sources, of course. Rabbi Joshua, about Rabbi Yeshua, he said, Ashrei yoladeto, happy is she who gave birth to him. Which is very interesting. I think Rashi brings here that his mother, when he was already in her womb, and as a child, she liked bringing him to the Beit Midrash, so he should get used to the music of the Torah, and get used to the idea of studying Torah. In other words, he was born into a Torah world, and because he was born into a Torah world, it is natural to him. Somebody for the Torah is natural to them. There is a certain advantage. It's an interesting concept. You have people you know who came, let's say, from a secular background, or not even a secular background, just not a scholarly background, and they study Torah later in their lives, and that's a great thing. And we have great scholars like that, like Rabbi Akiba, the next generation, right? Who was an ignoramus till the age of 40, and then he studies Torah, and he becomes a great scholar. But it seems to be also, there's something special about somebody who was raised into the world of Torah, and Torah is natural to them. It's a different perspective, it's a different focal point. It has its strengths, but there are also strengths for those who came in from the outside and understand how people on the outside understand Torah. They have their strengths too. So there are 2 types of strength. Ashrei yoladeto. For him, Torah is natural. He grew up with it, and he has a natural relation to it. Rabbi Yossi Chassid. Chassid, of course, means somebody who likes doing more than the letter of the law. Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel, Yorei Chet, somebody who is very reverent and has an innate fear of sin. And the 5th one, Rabbi Lezer ben Arach, Ma'ayana Mitgaber. His study of Torah is not like somebody who knows a lot of walking encyclopedia. He's able to take even small ideas of concepts and find new insights within them. That's called Mayana Mitgaber. He's not the pit that eventually fills itself up with water. He is spring. He is a source of water within himself, water being the ideas of Torah. He's able to take even a small idea of Torah and discover in it many new insights. These are the five. We'll compare the five. Hu Haya Omer, he used to say, if all of these sages of Israel were on one side of a balance, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanos, of course, was the one at the beginning who said, Ashrei Ladato. Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanos, the one who is the pit which doesn't lose any water. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanos would be more weighty than all of these sages. That's what we have in the name of their teacher, Yochanan ben Zakkai. In other words, he says that the most weighty one is the one who has the knowledge, the walking encyclopedia. But Abba Shaul, who must have been another student of his, said in the name of Yochanan ben Zakkai that if all the sages in Israel were on one side of the balance, on the other side you had Eliezer ben Horkanos, the one who is the Mayana Mitgaber, who is the fountain, the wellspring, who is able to analyze. And even if in the other side were Eliezer ben Horkanos against him, then Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach, the one who's Mayana Mitgaber, he would be more weighty than all the rest. Because Eliezer ben Arach, when you're able to give new insights, it's more weighty than everybody, even the one who's the walking encyclopedia. So which one is better? We have two points of view in the name of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. On the one hand, he says, it seems to be in his name that the walking encyclopedia is better, and the other hand, the one who has the insights. Now, the Talmud says in another place that you need, of course, both. But there's something about the insights. You see, when you're a walking encyclopedia, you know all the sources. When you have the analytic possibility of getting new insights, what we call in Hebrew chigdushim or novele, then it's an infinite possibility. You are plugging yourself into an infinite possibility of understanding the text. In that sense, it's weightier than everything because it's an unlimited source that you can plug yourself into. Now, what are these five? Because there is actually quite a bit to say. Let's just go over them once more just to understand them. And I prepared a little sheet here in order to explain what exactly we are talking about. Oh, I can't do it on this. I forgot it's not Zoom. so basically, you have here Borsud, which we said is the pit, meaning the walking encyclopedia. Ashrei Yoladeto, which means a natural in Torah environment, somebody who was born into the study of Torah since their childhood. A chassid, somebody who likes doing more than the letter of the law, which means they are sensitive to the needs of others. Yerei chet, which is somebody who keeps away from sin, eschews sin, and somebody who's able to study Torah very deeply. Now, these are very different because only number 1 and number 5 relate to the study Torah. The 3 in the middle, even though these are also Torah scholars, it's different relationship to Torah, which is not necessarily about study. As I said, the first one, being born into this world of the study of Torah where it's natural. The second one, somebody who likes doing things for others, because this sensitivity for others is going to help you understand Torah. What does that mean? You know, when I was a kid, they used to say, well, does a good teacher of mathematics have to look like a triangle? In the world of Torah, yeah. To be a real Torah scholar, you have to keep what it says. And so there's a real value to being a chassid, somebody who has that sensitivity towards others. Rabbi Leon Ashkenazi, Yehuda Ashkenazi of blessed memory, who is known as Mani too, famous Algerian-born rabbi from France, who made Aliyah in the later years of his life, used to say that how does the Talmud call a scholar? A scholar in the Talmud is called chaver, a friend. And it says in the Talmud, Chaver eino chashud ala ma'asrot, which means a chaver, a friend, which means a Talmudic scholar, is you can never suspect that they did not give their tithes. Who do you give the tithes to? The Levi, who has no land, the poor person, the one who doesn't have. The tithes are given to those who don't have. The scholar is always sensitive to the ones who don't have. Because part of being a scholar is having this sensitivity and this of understanding the needs of others. Reishit Chochma Yirat Hashem Sechel Tov L'chol Ma'asehem Tilato Omeret La'ad. As King David says, the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. And in this sense, the fear of God means moral sensitivity. How do I know that the fear of God is moral sensitivity? From the Bible. The Yerei Chet, the God-fearing person, is always the one with the moral sensitivity. When Abraham is asked by Avimelech, why did you call your wife Sarah your sister? Why didn't you tell us it's your wife? Abraham says, because I said there is no God-fearing, there's no fear of God in this area, and you're going to kill me because of my wife. To be God-fearing means to be moral. And Joseph, when his brothers suspect that he is going to do something against them, he says, Et Elohim ani yareh, I fear God. In the Bible, to be God-fearing means to be a moral person. So the Torah scholar, the chaver, is the yarei chet. So you have both here, by the way. You have both the first level called the chassid, which is the positive level, the one who is sensitive to others and therefore wants to do more, and the yarei chet, which means somebody who is God-fearing, and therefore they also keep away from the negative, and they don't do any of the negative things. It's the two sides of God-fearing. Chassid, who does more, yarei chet, keeps away from the negative. And then the last one, Mayan Kaber, we talked about before. In other words, what you have here is that you have here also 5 angles of what it means to be a Torah scholar, not just 5 students. But the reason why these 5 students are mentioned is that there are 5 sides of being a Torah scholar. Again, what are the 5 sides? And we'll get back to this next week. Side number 1 is just studying. Being able to be, as much as you can, a walking encyclopedia. Take in the sources, because that's step 1. When you take in the sources, that is going to enlighten you, and you'll see already different things from the various sources they will teach you. That's called Borsud Rebbe Lezer, Ben Horkanos. The second thing is try to be in a Torah environment. Watch other people, especially the ones that you can look up to, the ones who you feel can be your study buddies and also your teachers. That's called Ashrei Yoledato, until it makes sense to you. Then the next thing is Chassid. Try to develop the sensitivity to others, because in the end, a Torah scholar needs to develop the ethical sensitivities, or you'll never understand Torah. Because as Hillel said, it's all about don't doing to others that what you wouldn't want them to do to yourself, and all the rest are the derivatives. But this is the major principle. So you have to learn as much as you can to be a chassid, to this sensitivity to do more than the letter of the law, and to be a reched, as Rabbi Shimon says, which means to keep away from sin, and to the best of your abilities, like Rabbi Lezer ben Arach says, to be a mayan midgaber, to be a wellspring of knowledge, meaning to try to understand with your own insights, because your insights in Torah will be your Torah. As the Midrash and the Talmud say on the Pasuk in Tehillim, right at the beginning, Ashrei ha'ish asher lo halach b'atzat reshaim, praised or happy is the one who did not walk in the ways of the wicked, u'v'derech hata'im lo amad, and did not stand in the places of those who sin. And did not sit with those who are mockers. But he desires God's Torah. And in his Torah does he study day and night. So the verse means God's Torah, and his Torah is also God's Torah. The Talmud understands it differently. The Talmud says at the beginning it's called God's Torah. After it's called his Torah, which means the person who studies the Torah. The Talmud says that means that when at the beginning, before you study Torah, it's God's Torah. When you study Torah, then it's called your Torah. Why is it called your Torah? Because you start becoming a wellspring. You start getting insights, everybody according to their ability. And these insights are your Torah. It's your relationship to the Torah. It's God giving you these insights based on who you are, because it's your mind connecting to the Torah. So that part is called your Torah. And your Torah, which comes through these well springs, are going to shape you and shape your understanding of the universe. There's more to say about this, but I'm going to pause now. We continue again on this. This will be, of course, in second part of Mishnah Chet and Tet next week, and hopefully at the regular time of 1 o'clock on Tuesdays. Shalom, shalom.